What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Everything Ministry podcast. My name is Colin, and I am your host. Hey, guys, today we have a very special guest. We have Dwayne Riner with us today. Hey, Dwayne, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Glad to be on here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Glad to have you. Hey, if you just take just a moment, just introduce yourself, your church that you're at, and how long you've been in ministry, and kind of what your job title is at your church.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in children's ministry for um, since 1999. So
Wow,
a little
1999.
over 25 years. Yeah. So I've been doing that for a long time. I've been at my current church, the Ark Church in Conroe, Texas. I've been here. Yesterday was my 15th year here, 15th anniversary. So
Man, that's
that
awesome.
was, yeah, so it's been good. So here at the church, my official title is associate children's pastor, but I do a lot of things like, so I create all of the children's curriculum from birth to fifth grade. Then I am starting to work on creating curriculum for adult ministry classes.
Cool.
And then I also preach from time to time in the main service when the pastor asks. So, and then we do different online content. We're starting to work on some online content for adults as well as we create all the children's content. So
Yeah,
that's what I
y'all
do.
create all your VBS videos and all that stuff too, correct?
So yeah, so we have 3 years of curriculum that we've produced for preschool and elementary. So that's a full curriculum with um, full scripts and videos. So we have basically almost the equivalent of like a television episode with each lesson that's
Mhm.
broken up in three parts. So for preschool and elementary, so we have a couple of different shows that we do there, and then we're just starting to work on a toddler version of the curriculum, and we're creating a kind of a Miss Rachel style video for toddlers to hopefully give parents a version of that they can trust and not have to worry about any types
Mhm.
of other things being interjected in there. So
Yeah, that's good. What's the name of that? Is that curriculum already out for the,
yeah,
school year?
yes, yeah, you can actually access our curriculum at lessons.church. Um, and it's free to download,
Oh,
so
wow.
anyone can use it. Yeah. So we're close to having all 3 years up on the website. We're not too far away from having everything uploaded, but so it's a lot there. So churches are always talking about budget.
Mhm.
So this is a great way to kind of do that. We're also working on a fifth grade or fourth and fifth grade discipleship program for kids. And so I'm working on the curriculum for that now. So we've done first half and we'll do the second half. And that's kind of meant we do it for fourth and fifth graders. They join a thing called Crew,
Mhm.
and they get to serve on Wednesday nights and during the service. But prior to service, we do a lesson with them. And so what I'm actually do is taking those kids through basically through systematic theology from top to bottom. So those are intentionally low tech, and they're meant to be done in about 30 minutes. So that lesson, it's prior to service. So we'll actually, when that's done, we'll make that available on the website as well.
Man, I love that. That's something we definitely need to talk about, like, 'cause I'm in the preteen area, so 4th, 5th, 6th is kinda where we're at.
Yeah.
So, like, I love that, and especially diving into systematic theology. It's quite
Well,
interesting.
it's interesting because even these kids, I mean, their parents are volunteers, some of them are staff, and there's basic things about theology they don't understand because we're not always able to get into the depth of it on a Sunday because we would lose all of the kids who one are younger, a lot of them, or two, we have tons of unchurched people who come to our church. They're coming for the first time. Maybe the parents grew up, a lot of them grew up Catholic or they grew up not in church at all. They go away for a while, they're coming back, so they know very little about the Bible itself. So these
Mm,
kids, by virtue of that, they don't know, they know very little. So, when I was, just talking, explaining the fact that of the Trinity or explaining the fact of Jesus's divinity, they struggle with that because they didn't really understand it. So it's funny, you think, well, these kids understand all of this stuff. But in reality, when you start breaking it down and you start pushing them on it and part of what I do is I ask a lot of questions to try to get them to think. So
yeah.
even just saying, is Jesus God and explaining that, you would think they understand it, but they don't totally understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people, you think your kids know these basics of it, but actually go and talk to them and ask them. Don't tell them, but ask them the questions, and you'll kind of be shocked with how little they actually understand about the basics of what Orthodox Christianity and what we believe.
Yeah, man, that is so good. And guys, that's not even part of the podcast today. I mean, that is great. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. That
So yeah, we'll make all that available. We think we like our church and then the partners that we work with, church apps, they run all the tech side of it. Plus they go and help churches set up their children's ministries. They help them implement things. They also have a program called Free Show, which is a church presentation software that's
mm,
like Pro Presenter, but free.
okay.
And so they help us with that. So honestly, we always tell people that between our church and their ministry, we've invested easily over $1 million into our curriculum. When you take into account everyone's the salaries, the equipment, the time, everything that we've done, the money we've put into it. When you put all that into the account, we've done that. So even though it's free curriculum, it's not cheap.
Right.
So it's just that our church leadership and their leadership, their ministry have decided to subsidize the cost so that other churches can use it for free.
Man, that's a blessing because there are so many people who can't afford curriculum. And like you said, ProPresenter within itself is like super expensive. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's
So yeah, if you're looking for high quality resources, but also too, we've had churches who can afford curriculum,
Mhm.
but they switched I won't name the curriculum, but a much more expensive curriculum. And they switched to our curriculum. They saved $8,000 a year by switching. And now that's money that they can put back into their ministry. So it's not even just for churches that can't afford it. That's the misnomer. It's like, if you could because with some of these curriculums, you will spend thousands of dollars
for
and
sure.
some of them are even increasing price. So let's say if you injected $5,000 to $7,000 back into your ministry each year, what would you do with that?
Mm, yeah.
So
That's
kind of you start thinking about it that way, and it's like um becomes okay, what events could I host? What outreach could I do? How could I send all of my kids to camp for free?
right.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's
But
lessons about church.
yeah, so you go there, check it out, and the other good thing is like most curriculum companies, you can't really talk to the people who are doing it. So but with me, you can join the Facebook group. You can do stuff. You can message me. I'll answer questions. I'll tell people how I did stuff. I'll tell them where to find things. And sometimes we'll even take their suggestions and fix something that we didn't notice. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah. That's awesome. I might have to check that out because that's, our downstairs, our preteen ministry is a little different, but our elementary and our kids ministries,
yeah,
they use a certain curriculum and it's very expensive. And I mean,
yeah.
yeah, so takes a big chunk of the
Yeah,
budget.
and you imagine you put that across both elementary and preschool, and
Mhm.
then also soon we'll be adding um, toddler videos to that. So that'll be nursery. So now you'll have the entire thing for free. And not to mention, we do a full small group lesson and a full large group lesson. So it also could take care of your midweek. So now you're literally not having to buy anything. And because we're a church, so we're constantly trying to improve it. We're also creating we have the whole video series with the curriculum. Now we're going back through for ourselves and creating an entire second video series to accompany the curriculum so that you can either have a different video or um, you can actually have separate video for Sunday and Wednesday. And we do the 3-year sequence here because the way I figured it out was if you do 3 years of curriculum, if a kid comes every single Sunday, and that doesn't happen. Even the staff doesn't like always make it every single Sunday, or volunteers as much as we'd like. So they don't do it. So for regular Cindy's for sure don't. So if they go every single, if a child did for some reason go every single Sunday from 2 years old through fifth grade, they'd only see a lesson 3 times.
Hmm. Yeah.
So how many of those? And so we're constantly looking often for new curriculum. It's like, why? When there's such fundamental things that we want them to learn. And at best case scenario, they might hear it 2 to 3 times. And that would be a miracle scenario. So most likely is by the time you teach it the second time, a good number of the kids who are there never even heard that the first time. So it's not necessary to keep buying curriculum indefinitely.
Hmm. No, I like that, man. That's good. Because again, we circulate. We have fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. So even for us, like having that 3 years, so it's restarting is
Yeah.
kind of key for us. Um, well, hey guys, our discussion topic today is actually calendar chaos, events, and church attendance. So, Dwayne, just if you don't care, just kind of run us through what is
Yeah.
when we say calendar chaos and or events and church attendance. What does that mean to you? What comes to your mind?
So we used to, so our church has done a variety of things like everybody. And I mean, back in the day, we did a kids camp every
Mhm.
summer. It was at the church. It was a day, nine to 5 day camp. And it was a very successful. I mean, we actually charged for it because it was a 9 to 5 day camp, and we would sell out in record time, and we'd have a waiting list a mile long. So we would do that. Our church now before this was before I came on staff, they would do a fall fest where they would have thousands and thousands of people show up to the fall festival and things like that. But here's the thing we noticed with a lot of these external events. One, it's a tremendous lift on staff and volunteers to do separate events because you still have to do Sundays. You still have to do, for a lot of churches like us, Wednesdays, things like that. So you still have to do all that. So you're doing everything in addition to what you're normally doing. And then secondly, it's a big expense, obviously, to have it because you have to ramp up everything for these large numbers and stuff. But then the last thing is that it honestly has it has almost no meaningful, makes no meaningful difference to your Sunday attendance. I always tell people this with VBS. Think back to because I was at a church that did VBS before I came here and we did the kids camp. So I understand. And the VBS at my last church, we ran more VBS than we did on Sunday attendance. In
Mm.
fact, we did a VBS Sunday following Sunday, and we would invite the parents back. At that church in Atlanta, we went to 2 services for VBS Sunday before we went to 2 services for Easter Sunday because that's how popular it was. But
Oh.
3 Sundays after that, 2 Sundays after that, what was the attendance? The same it's always
Mm.
been. And I always ask people, think about your biggest fall festival, think about your biggest uh, VBS, and I want you to think about the Sunday after. How many people actually moved from that? Think about Easter egg hunts.
Yeah.
How many people do you have come to church from an Easter egg hunt? Very few, maybe a handful. But how many people show up for the Easter egg hunt? A lot.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's where we have a challenge in churches that are we addicted to numbers? Because we love the fact to be able to say we had 1,000 people at our Easter egg hunt. We had 5,000 people at our fall festival. We had 800 or whatever event. We had 300 kids at VBS. That's great.
Mhm.
But if we're not actually transitioning them to Sunday attendees, what's the point? Like, what
No,
did
that's
that actually accomplish?
that's good. So, what kind of message do you think comes across when our attendance for our events are higher than our average service? And do you think that do you think the events are causing more of a distraction instead of, because I know the average person is like, even myself, I'll just be honest. Last night we had a bowling event, a cosmic bowling event.
Hmm.
And I told my wife as we got back in the car, I said, what's crazy is some of the kids who came to our event I haven't seen in months. And we're a pretty large
Right.
church, right? So,
Yeah.
well, I haven't seen them in a while, and I'm like, here they are for the event. So,
I think the problem is that one of two things happens. One is people show up for the events because it's like a fun thing,
sure.
external thing. It's low commitment for that.
Mm,
But I think that's part of the problem. I think so. There was the attractional church model throughout that really became big in the 80s with Willow Creek. And then into the
Mhm.
90s when I was in college was huge. And then into the 2000s, early 2000s. So that became huge. I think the problem is I think we're actually starting to move away from the attractional church model, which is low effort, low commitment.
Mm.
I think that the interesting thing that I like about Gen Z is I think as they're coming to church, they're not actually as interested in low effort, low commitment. It's like if I'm going to do this, I might as well do it.
That's good.
So I think we might actually send the wrong message when we make all these low effort, low commitment events that we're saying to them church is a low effort, low commitment proposition. Take it or leave it. Come when
Mm.
it's fun. Don't worry about coming when it's the hard stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that helps us in the long run. And two, our goal is the Great Commission, right? To make disciples. It's very hard to make disciples at attractional events. In fact, how many times do you go on a Kidman Facebook group and everybody's asking, how do you do that? How do you present the gospel at an Easter egg hunt?
Hmm.
Well, that's a problem, right? Because
Yeah.
nobody wants to sit and listen to it because they came for that, for the
Yeah.
egg hunt. They didn't come for the gospel. So they have no interest in it. So everybody's always trying to shoehorn in the gospel into a fall fest, into a thing. The problem is because you've started with the event as the priority, and then you're like, how do we fit Jesus into this? So the idea is to flip that on its head a little bit so that be the priorities shift. And I think that actually creates a better environment. Plus, we have to be honest with ourselves. Most of these attractional events are not attracting non-Christians. They're attracting other churches who are looking for things to do, whose churches can't afford to do those events. So they
Very
go
true.
to the larger church who is having the big egg hunt, who's having the big fall fest,
Hmm.
and that becomes their that becomes their outlet. I mean, how many times do you do VBS or camp and you get phone calls from people? Which week are you having it? Why? Because they're setting up their summer childcare.
Mm.
When we stopped doing kids camp, the angriest people were not the people in our church; it was the people in the community who used it as, even though we charged for it, as affordable daycare.
Yeah.
So the question you have to ask yourself is that the best use? It's not to say that there isn't value to all these things. That's the important thing. That you could sit there and say, well, this happened at VBS. This happened at a fall fest. We did get this family from an egg hunt. That's true. So it doesn't mean that there's never any value from it. But we have to start asking ourselves, what's the return on the investment? See, we always count the cost of the event as what was the budget. So you think about last night, your cosmic bowling thing.
Hmm.
Well, you think about the cost being the budget,
Sure.
but the cost was more than that. If you take your salary, you divide it by the number of hours. How many hours did you spend planning it? How many hours did you spend executing? How many hours did you spend on the post part? So you add all that to the cost. Now that's just one event, but take that to VBS. When I used to do VBS at the church and I was kind of more of a one man band with volunteers, for the 2 weeks before VBS and the week of VBS, I would average around 100 to 120 hours of work a week.
Mhm.
During VBS, I would get there at 9, do VBS at night, stay the entire day, do VBS at night, and stay till about 2 or 3 in the morning, getting it all ready for the next day. That's what it took to pull it off. But I would only count the cost of what the budget was, but that wasn't the cost. So, because once people start adding we always treat time as very, as something that's not valuable,
Mhm.
but it actually is. There's a cost to it. So what happens is we actually very rarely adequately account for the cost of all of these events because we undervalue our time, and there is a price to pay. Eventually that'll come due with all of these events that are external to what our main job is, which is to make disciples.
Yeah. So I got a lot of questions off of that. Is there a way to incorporate these events? So let's just take my bowling last night. Okay. So we did a
Mhm.
preteen bowling night. Um, you really can incorporate that into a weekly service. So,
Right.
but what kind of do you think that those are more of the fluff style events that we don't really need? What do you think about that?
No, I think it's good to have stuff like that. I just
Mhm.
think what we have to do is get creative about incorporating them into the service itself.
Okay.
So, like, instead of saying have a separate event where you shoehorn in, Can you incorporate something like that? Maybe not the exact thing because you can't bring a bowling alley, but you can bring inflatable stuff or you can bring other stuff. Could you bring it into the pre-service? Could you extend pre-service a little bit into service? So you sacrifice a little bit of the service time. But if we're very intentional with our services, we can accomplish a lot in 30 to 35 minutes.
Mhm.
In fact, I would say that a lot of us could accomplish more in 30 to 35 minutes than a lot of churches do in an hour to an hour and a half because it's full of so much fluff.
Mm.
So on those days where we do big, fun, exciting things that attract people, if we just consolidate and focus our services, we can still get a very meaningful service into that and put them together so that we have an attractional aspect, but we're also going to call them to something meaningful with the
Yeah.
service. But here's the even more important part with your preteens, with our kids that we reach. When we have these events, they're not there by themselves. When they come to a VBS, they get dropped and left. When they
Mhm.
come to a Sunday or a Wednesday service, that's an actual event, but it's incorporated in the service, the parents are also going to service because
Mhm.
we're not allowing parents to just drop and leave.
Right.
They have to be they have to stay on campus. So what happens is now they're being exposed to the pastor, to the main service, that type of stuff. So like our youth ministry has a thing called Vibe Night every so often, but they do it on Wednesday during their service. So what they do is they'll have a big thing that's like service starts at 7, kids start showing up at 5:30. They have to hold them at the door to let them
Yeah.
in, and then they open the doors. But they'll have almost 1,000 kids at a Wednesday night at Vibe Night.
Wow.
But here's the advantage: they didn't do 1,000 kids. They just showed up for a fun thing. They did 1,000 kids that showed up for food, and they hung out, had fun. But then they also got to experience worship. They got the gospel message preached. There was an altar call, all of that stuff. So now we've at least incorporated them into the life of the church. I think too many of these events separate themselves from the life of the church. And then we wonder why they never actually integrate themselves into the church because they've only experienced the church separate from the
Mm.
church body. They've experienced an event, but not the church. So what the idea is, what we do here at our church is that we bring people into the life of the church through these fun events. So we do that. So on Easter, we would do our Easter egg hunt during the service. But now we're not even doing an Easter egg hunt. We're doing a candy bar. The kids get better candy. So, and I mean, let's be real. No one's hunting 100,000 eggs. They're just locusts, like a
Yeah.
biblical plague, picking it up.
Yep.
It's not hunting. So we found we can get better candy by doing bulk candy, but unwrapped. And the way to do that is you have them in jars, they scoop them, they fill up their jars. So they can get over a pound of candy. That's
Wow.
actually name brand candy. And we spent less than we did on the 100,000 eggs that were filled with very junky, penny candy.
Yeah.
So anyway, but we do that within the service. We don't do a separate thing, but then the kids get the gospel. They get we do a salvation response in that service. So now the kids are experiencing that during Fall Fest. As we do that for pre-service and part of the service, and then they still get worship and the gospel, and they get to experience it. In summer, we don't do BBS. We do a thing called Summer to the Max that we created where we do it across the entire summer, but we do it on Sundays and Wednesdays. So the kids, like, yes, I want to come to a petting zoo. Great. You're also going to hear the gospel. Your parents are also going to go to church,
Yeah.
things like that.
That's
Does that
good.
make sense?
Yeah, it does, it does. But I wanna you said something, and I just wanna it kinda goes along with a question that I had for you is, do you think that people plan their events out of pressure or from purpose? Because I think, we get a lot of feedback, and I don't know, maybe it's just us, but we do get a lot of parents. Okay, maybe it's not the greatest thing to do, but every now and then I send out a survey once a year to our parents, like, "Hey, how are we doing? What's some things we can do better to kind of ignite with your kids or to equip you better?" And one of the things that we get a lot actually is, "Hey, can you do more events? My kids need more time with." And I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know if that's a babysitting kind of thing, or if that is like get them out of my hair, or like, hey, yeah, they need more fellowship. So, do you feel like people are doing it from pressure or from purpose?
I think they do it for a couple of things. This is my opinion.
Hmm.
So I feel like Paul right now, where he's like, it is I, not the Lord, who
Mm,
speaks. This is my
yeah.
opinion on it. Uh, here's what I think. I think we do it for a couple of reasons. I think we do it because it's what's always been done.
Mm,
So we do egg hunts because we're supposed to do egg hunts, right? We do VBS because we're supposed to do VBS. We do Fall Fest because that's what you're supposed to do if you're a children's ministry. But we don't always ask, should we do it? We just assume we're supposed to. So I think there's a pressure from the past that does
mhm,
that. And I think sometimes there is a pressure from parents. But the question is what is their motivation for the pressure? And I think odds are they probably have more of they're really looking for clean, safe babysitting.
mhm,
I need these kids to do something fun, but I don't want to take them. They don't want to hang around me. They're getting that age. And I'm afraid to take them to these other places because they may not be good. I'm not saying that couldn't be a valid reason to have an event, but you have to ask yourself, what's the cost? But more importantly than the cost of the actual event, what's the cost to staff and volunteers? If your Sundays or Wednesdays suffer because you're doing these events, then have you done what's right for the kingdom, even though the parents may feel like it's right for them? And that's the question. Those are the hard questions we have to ask in ministry is it may feel fun and it may feel right. Like all of us love these events for the most part. If you love kids and you love hanging out with them, you like doing these types of things.
right.
But is it right for the kingdom?
Mhm,
Is it build the kingdom? And that's the question you have to ask yourself. And that's what you evaluate. And you have to ask the purpose because often people will pressure us to do events. And we can often convince ourselves of the purpose enough to believe that the purpose drives it, not the pressure.
yeah.
But I'm not always convinced that that's the case. And I think it could be pressure from a few different areas. It could be pressure from leadership who don't fully understand it. But like one of the things we did with our summer program was we were able to articulate and explain this is going to improve attendance across the board. And it did. And then it became easy to get that program through. But the thing is like Wednesdays and Sundays can be the event the kids come to that they're excited to come to. They love to come to. I mean, we have teens that flood every Wednesday because they love being there.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of fun doing it and it's a safe environment for them to do it. But it doesn't need to necessarily be a Sunday, a Thursday night or a Friday night activity. And it doesn't mean that you never do anything. It's just it's got to have a really important purpose that doesn't tax the thing. But like if they do sometimes Sunday night things with our youth, they'll do it. It's really more of a discipleship program for them, for their leaders. That's a different scenario. Then you're saying, yeah, we're investing continually into that. We're not necessarily trying to have a separate event that just builds those numbers in. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I understand I'm being very, almost maybe black or white on this. And I understand there's some nuance to it and people may disagree with some of that, but it's just, I don't think there's maybe a lot of us, because I got to be honest, I was in that. I say it from experience because I didn't do this. Is actually asking, what is it costing me to do this event versus what am I getting in a business? You always talk about return on investment. Everybody would
Mm,
think if you don't, you're crazy, right? You go out of business. We never think about we usually don't think about return on investment with things. We just think we just throw everything out there and assume it's all good. And we never actually stop to say, what's the actual return? Because it's more than just what was the attendance of the event, is how did it meaningfully impact your church and the growth of your
yeah,
church?
yeah. So, Dwayne, what do you do? Like, as far as, because I'm hearing this and I'm like, and I'm wondering, so do you have specific events that you do, and do you do them periodically, or do you just have basically your, not you said you don't do VBS, you I have a different name for it, and then you have your fall festival and your Easter. Are those
Yeah.
kind of where you kind of hang out, or do you have other things that you implement through your services?
So what we try to do is we try to have we have these cornerstone like events. So you have fall fest in the fall. We have Christmas at Christmas time, do a Christmas thing.
Mhm.
Easter in the spring, and then summer is the entire June and July is summer to the max. So those are basically all the events, and we don't try to do other stuff other than that. I mean, we might on Super Bowl encourage the kids to wear their jersey or something, but we're not putting in the investment. And the reason is what we try to do is to make our Sundays and our Wednesdays so engaging as services
Mhm.
that we don't necessarily need all of those other things. Like, because what happens is sometimes when you overdo the events or you overdo all these external things, your Sundays and Wednesdays suffer. When we used to do kids camp, it was really amazing week of camp. Like, we really pulled out all the stops. But the rest of the summer was awful. Our
Mhm.
Sundays and our Wednesdays were terrible because we had burnt ourselves out. We were creatively maxed out. We didn't have time to plan for the rest of the summer that well. So the Sunday services themselves were less than stellar. So what we did when we canceled the camp is, first of all, we didn't do anything for a few years, and we just focused on making our Sundays and our Wednesdays better. So we really focused on how do we make these services the best, most engaging, most impactful services we can, so that every week, because what happens is now every week here feels like what a lot of kids experience at a VBS, and they just experience it weekly with the service because it's that engaging and that exciting. And then on that way, on top of that, we only have to add a few of these events throughout the year that just kind of anchor the different seasons, and they coincide with what are big, big days at our church, things like that. And that way, we're able to actually kind of manage our time, manage our energy, our schedule, and try to get the most impact out of it. But the key is really the whole purpose of this is you want your Sundays and Wednesdays to be spectacular. And
Right.
I'm not even necessarily talking about you have to do, all these crazy things, but I'm saying, like, whatever it is that engages the kids the most, that's what you want it to be. You want to have really awesome, excellent, well done services, but a lot of times that becomes an afterthought.
Mhm.
The Sunday becomes the afterthought to having the VBS, to having the egg hunt, to having the fall festival, to having this, that, or the other, the Nerf Wars event. That becomes everything on people's minds. And they're like, yeah, we'll figure out Sunday. We'll throw on this curriculum. We'll have this little service, whatever, it'll be fine. What is that message is that sending?
Right.
What are we saying about it? Instead, what we try to say is, how can we have the most awesome Sundays imaginable that we can produce? And we keep learning and growing, but how can we have those? And that becomes the key thing. Then what we then began to do is add these anchor events throughout the year, but we did them in conjunction with Sundays and Wednesdays so that it drives attendance to church from both kids and their parents.
You kinda hit on this, but I wanted to ask you, what would you say to the person who kind of aims their events for as far as, to do an outreach program? You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe they use an event in order to have friends or have their, students bring friends into the church,
Yeah,
or, what would you say to the person that does that? What would
we
your
do that too. We just have them do it on a service day so
Mhm.
that it gets the friends to service, because that's the key. Because really,
And it
I
gets
want
their
to
hook.
ask, yeah, because here's the point. And this is where I don't want it to sound bad. Like, I really try to be like sympathetic to people. And I've been in all size churches. My very first children's church, I had 14 kids total.
Mm.
And they threw me in, and I had never taught kids before in my life. They handed me a curriculum book and said, teach. So I
Mhm.
figured it out through trial and error. So I've been all the way from there to all the way to where we're at now, church with several thousand. So I've been kind of everywhere in between. So I understand a lot of the challenges at all levels. But the problem with outreach, as we deem it outreach, which is kind of this sort of very 20th century, American view of outreach, is, what are we actually, is it outreach if we're not actually making a disciple?
Mm.
If we created an attender, I don't think that's actually what outreach is intended to do. And you say, but these people responded at this outreach. Okay, great. But did they actually go to church after that? What
Mm.
did they do? Did they actually respond to Jesus, or did they just make a mental acknowledgement that Jesus exists? Or did they actually say Jesus is Lord, which means their lives changed as a result of that? Their allegiance changed to actually follow him. How many of those do we actually see at these events? I'm not saying that never happens, because I know for a fact it does, but does that happen on a large scale for the amount proportionate to the numbers of people who show up at these events?
Mhm.
Are we training them? Or if we get them to service, through a fun event that they can invite to do, because it's great. Like if we have a petting zoo at Summer to the Max, it makes it really easy for a kid to invite their friend. But then they go to church, they actually sit in a service. Their parents potentially go to that service. And then we are explaining the gospel. We're not shoehorning in a, hey, Jesus died on the cross for you. Say ABCs and you'll be saved and go to heaven. That
Mhm.
we're not throwing that in 5 minutes. We're still taking 30 minutes or so to really adequately explain this gospel message to these kids, so that we hope it will be a stronger opportunity for them to hear the message and really make a response to it. It doesn't guarantee it, but I'm just saying, often with what we call outreach, are we actually reaching out to these people in a, in a meaningful way? And I think that's the question we have to really ask ourselves.
Yeah, so we have we're kind of blessed with our youth ministry. We have this facility, we call it the Hangar, and this facility, I mean, it has a sanctuary, it has a basketball court, it has a field house with turf, and I mean, it's just a pretty awesome facility. So what we typically do for preteens, we'll go down there on a Saturday night because our church is Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays.
Right.
So Saturdays, we'll do, if service starts at 6 o'clock, we'll do like a 4 to 6. They come and they get to hang out, but then 6 o'clock, they
Right.
do the message with us. For us, we found that really it benefits. So there's ups and downs to it, right? So students will bring their friends. However, a lot of times we see that the kids will come, but mom and dad obviously aren't coming because they were brought by a
Yeah.
friend, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times we see the benefits of that, but we also see that there are some negative sides because now the kid's not coming unless they're invited because mom and dad may not be
Hmm.
believers or they might go to a different church. So
Yeah.
I
And
definitely
that happens, but you putting it next to the service, you've increased the likelihood at least the kid's gonna come,
right.
and they're with a person who has an adult there. So there's a chance.
Yeah.
There's a chance in that situation, but the kid is going to service, and that's where I feel like you're gonna see the most impact at that point. So you're taking advantage. So that works really well. But if you had that same event on a Friday,
Mm,
you might get those same kids to come, but they would never go to a service, right?
sure.
So at least you're making that impact. So it just depends. Sometimes kids bring them, but then sometimes with our kids, they invite their friends. And then what happens is their friends come with their parents separately because they
Yeah.
don't necessarily, I notice kids, they don't do the sleepovers as much as they used to and stuff. So that whole back in the day, you'd be like, have a sleepover and bring the kid. Like that doesn't really happen anymore. People don't
Yeah.
really let their kids do that. But they've been inviting their friends, and sometimes the parents come. But if they don't, there's still a chance that you'll get the parents by the kid loving it so much. But if the kid doesn't actually experience a service, they don't love the service, they love the event. So they're not going to
Mm,
go home. So what we have is kids who will go home, tell their parents, I want to go to that church.
yeah.
Not I want to go to that fall festival next year. I want to go to that church.
Yeah.
Then what happens? Parents will be like, well, my kid wanted to come, so I felt like it was the right thing to do. So then they come along. So it's all about increasing the odds and getting the most value out of the time you're putting into it. So that extra 2 hours on Saturday for you
Mhm.
is not the same as if you had a 2 hour event on Friday,
Yeah.
because you have to put extra time and effort into prep, getting it ready, plus you're spending there, plus you still have to be there for the service on Saturday.
Right.
So by you tacking an hour or 2 hours onto that Saturday, you've been more efficient and effective with your time, which means you're going to have less burnout, less problems, and I think you get a better end result. That's really what it's about: is how do we maximize the time that we have and the resources we have to get the most out of it by tacking on an extra 30 minutes, tacking on an hour, whatever. Or if, like we do, we find a way to mix it in with what we're already doing. But you do that, and then you get more out of it, and you're not burning out your volunteers. So people wonder, why are our volunteers burnt out? Well, because you also had them for 5 hours at a fall festival, and the next day you wanted them to come in that Sunday morning to do service like regular. And then they also know in 2 weeks you're going to do this other event on a Saturday, a nacho and Nerf night or whatever. And you do these things and you wonder, you're like, man, I can't keep volunteers.
Yeah.
That
Because
may be why.
on top of their 40-hour work week, their kids, their family, their
Exactly.
schools. Yeah, so that's a
It's
lot of
our
kids.
life, but it's not their life. And
Yeah.
so we're trying to make it their life, and unpaid, and
Mhm.
we wonder why we have a hard time keeping them. So
Yeah.
those are the hard questions that we have to ask ourselves.
Yeah, I brought that up because what I didn't say at the beginning was you and I met at a conference, and you were
Yeah.
leading a group about this very topic. We were talking about it a little bit, and actually, after we took some notes, we came up. So that's kind of where this Saturday came into play. I was like,
Oh,
man,
okay.
that makes so much
Awesome.
sense. So like that's how we
Yeah.
incorporated some type of event for us. So yeah, I just wanted to, yeah. So that's
That's
awesome.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a good use of outreach because you're creating an event that's attractional, but you're tying it into something that has some real commitment to it, that has the
Mm,
ability to really speak into them. So that's a good merging of
yeah.
two things. So that's what I'm just kind of encouraging churches to think about is and to not just continue to do those things because we've always thought that was the way to do them.
Yeah. Well, man, this has been an awesome conversation. But before we wrap up, tell us about your new book that you got coming out, or is it already out? Herman and Rusty.
Yeah, well, it's actually available on Amazon right now. You can find it. But it's called Herman and Rusty Out of Time. And it's like it's a chapter book for older elementary kids, like 3rd to 5th grade, and, I wrote it it's these characters I created this character, about 25 years ago when I was doing children's church. I used to use it to teach memory verses and things like that, and, over the years, I've used it at different churches, and it's kinda grown, and so these characters became the core characters that we use in our elementary curriculum. And so I decided to write a kids novel about them, and it's kind of fun. It's a science fiction time travel thing, but it also teaches them some really interesting things about church history and also about forgiveness. And so
Mm,
it's a great, clean kind of book for kids. But it's also fun if you use our curriculum. They actually have a book they can read about the characters that tie into the characters they see each Sunday at church. So it's kind of a fun way because parents are always looking for stuff that's not going to be offensive or stuff that's not going to work in some things that they don't want their kids learning about and stuff like that. So this, you're getting something with a Christian worldview, and as a children's pastor, is something you can tie into what the kids are learning.
yeah, that's awesome. So they can check that on Amazon. It's Herman and
Yeah,
Rusty, and
yeah, out of time.
Out of Time. And also check in lessons.church for the curriculum goes
Yeah,
along with it. So that's awesome. Before we
yeah. You
wrap
can
up
reach out
again,
to me if you have any questions.
yeah.
So.
Yeah, how can, folks reach out to you actually? So, Facebook, social media.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on a lot of the Kidmin groups, so people can feel free to send me a message there, or you can email me at my church. Dwayne. It's Dwayne.Riner at thearkchurch.com. Send me an email if you have questions. Be glad to share what we have. Like our whole Summer to the Max program, that curriculum is all available on lessons.church. So gives you kind of a whole setup. We even have a webinar that people can watch that we recorded that explains the whole process of how to do your summer. And we've had churches all the way from churches with 10 kids up to churches that have thousands in attendance who have used the program. It's worked across the board, but it's increased attendance across the summer and pretty much every church that's used it.
That's awesome, man. Again, thanks, Dwayne. Thanks for coming on. I'm gonna put all of that stuff in the show notes so people can
Cool.
find out where they can reach out, contact you, and again, get that book. So again,
Yeah.
thanks for coming on. Appreciate having you.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I had fun.
Absolutely.